Hi there and welcome to today's video. This is the third installment in the DIY garden shed series that I'm doing with my brother. So we're building a shed in my brother's garden, and in this video we're going to be concentrating on installing the roof, which is quite a simple process if I'm honest, but if you've never done this before then this video is going to show you exactly how to do it. There's also a few mistakes throughout the process as well, so this is going to be really valuable because obviously if you can see the mistakes we made then you can avoid them yourself. So what you can see me doing at the minute is marking out for the joists, and I'm simply going along the top front wall plate here at 400 centres, so I'm spacing these joists at 400, and then on this last one here you'll notice that it's just a little bit longer, so I think I'm going to measure this now and you can see it's just a tad longer, so I'll put it back to where it should go. It's probably about 100mm long, but for this it really doesn't matter. We're not having to land a joint for the OSB on the roof or anything like that, so it's not a big issue. So I decided to just leave this one a little bit longer rather than averaging it out on each gap for each joist. So once you've done the front, then you just simply need to move to the back and mark it out exactly the same. So really simple, just use the tape measure, 400mm from each joist, and just mark it with a pencil. Once that's done, we can start adding the joists manually into place, and we're just going to sit these roughly where they want to be. So what I've done here is I've cut the joists 100mm longer on the front and 100mm longer on the back, and that's going to give us a nice little overhang when we put the roof on. Okay, so very simple process there. And then once this is done, we can move to the front and we can start actually adjusting these to exactly where they want to be. So you can see now I'm just on the end joist here and I'm measuring at the bottom to make sure it's 100mm. Once it's at 100mm and I'm happy, I'm just going to mark it on the bottom there so we know that's in exactly the right place. And then I'm going to move to the other end and do the exact same thing. Now the reason we're doing this is we want these two to be absolutely bang on. Then we're going to fix them in place and we're going to set up a string line so we can line the joists in between through with those two end joists. And you can see me doing that now. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to spike two screws, one either side. I'm also going to use the nail gun as well occasionally just to hold it in place so the joist isn't moving about. So I'll stick a nail in, then when it's in the position that I want it, then I'll add two screws. Two screws down through the joist at an angle into the wall plate is going to be completely sufficient to hold this roof in place. There's no real need for anything like joist hangers. Following this, we can move to the back of the shed and we'll fix the back of these joists in exactly the same way. Just get them on the marks and spike in two screws, one either side. Okay, so once that's done, we can move on to the next part of the job, which is putting the OSB on the roof. So you can see now how this is set up. We've also added a row of noggins in here. So the row of noggins is to catch the edge of this OSB. You'll also notice on the end there is two joists there, and what we've done is on either side we've added another joist on the edge, so we have a 50mm overhang. That's just going to make sure that we have an overhang all the way around the shed, and then when we put the felt on later on, it's going to just have a nice sort of edge where it can drip off and it's not running down the walls. Okay, so this is really simple. Just put the OSB up, line it into place, and then you can see I'm just fixing this down into the roof joists. Once I've done that front edge, I'm going to jump onto the roof and use a level just to put a line through, just so we know exactly where we're screwing, so we're hitting the joists. And once that's done, I'm going to add the rest of the screws. So this is going to be 4 screws in each joist. So you can see I've done the front edge, I'm doing the back edge, and then you'll notice I put 2 more in between. At this point, it's actually a really good time to mention one of the mistakes that we made. And you'll notice as I'm walking about on the roof here, it's actually wobbling quite a bit. And the reason for this is we never added noggins to the internal walls, to the stud-work. And if we'd have done that, it would have made it much more solid when we were walking about on it. So if you do decide to build one of these yourself, I highly recommend adding the noggins before you do any work on the roof. We didn't put these until much later on, and when we did it, it really stiffened the whole build up, like it became much more rigid. There was no real wobble when we walked on the roof. So just a little tip there, tiny mistake, not a really big issue, but definitely worth considering. Okay, so we're just fixing this last piece on the back now. This was an angled cut because this shed is not a completely square structure. It is angled to accommodate the most space in the yard. And you can see here, I'm just doing the exact same thing. I've marked it with the level and then I'm screwing down the lines just to make sure this is secured fully in place. Okay, once this is done, we can move on to the next bit, which is adding the fascia and soffit. And this is the next mistake, guys. Now what you can actually see us doing here is adding the soffit first, and then we're going to be adding the fascia afterwards. And this is the traditional way you would add a standard fascia and soffit. However, in this instance is actually the wrong way to do it. And the reason for that is we're adding the soffit on now, which is a nice piece of cladding, and then we're going to add the fascia on afterwards, which is going to overlap, and we're going to end up with a ugly joint at the bottom. So when we finished this, I actually ended up taking it all off and redoing it because I just knew it was going to look rough. So this is just one of those things. By seeing us make the mistake, you can obviously avoid it if you're doing this yourself. Put the fascia on first and then overlap the soffit. That's going to make it a much cleaner, neater finish. Not only that, but you're going to be able to put the felt over the OSB and completely cover it. And obviously the OSB is more prone to like damage from weather and moisture. So really we want this completely sealed. We don't really want any visible joints on the OSB. Okay, so once that's done, we moved on to the felt on the roof, and this is the next mistake, and this was a big one. It was rather frustrating, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to try and figure out what's actually going wrong here. Okay, so I don't know if you figured this out yet, but the problem is my brother has started felting this from the front, and what we should have done is we should have started from the back, so then we can overlap the next layer. So my brother here is laying it down, he's putting the nails in, he's adding the blackjack where the next joint's going to go, and then all of a sudden you're going to notice that he realises what he's done, sits down, there's quite a bit of swearing going on here, and he wasn't happy at all. So what we decided to do, because we only had a limited amount of felt to do the roof, we decided to cut that off and then get the next pieces and kind of fold them underneath. So we still had that overlap. It would have been much more difficult to take that front piece off because it had so many nails in it, it would have just got ripped and damaged. So what you can see him doing now is rolling the next piece out, cutting that to the right length. What he's going to do is he's going to underlap it, if that makes sense. So then the front piece actually overlaps that next piece. So I've zoomed in a little bit here to show you what I mean. So he's going to pull this back, and then he's going to lift that front piece up, apply a load of blackjack underneath, and then slide this under. So this was really kind of bodging it, but it, you know, the end result was perfectly fine, and it, you know, ended up exactly how we wanted it. It was just quite awkward, and my brother was really frustrated with this at this point. But there you go, you can see how it looks now, nice and neat. It looks exactly as it would have done if we'd have done it the right way first time around, and thankfully we had just enough felt to get this finished. Finally, you can see how it actually looked in the yard. So it looks nice and neat. You can see it's been folded over and pinned on the sides. Very nice and neat there. You'll also notice something here that we haven't done yet, which is the door. So you haven't seen us make that, you haven't seen us fit that. So if you want to see that, that's going to be the next video. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.